Hi, everybody in Luqman Nation. This is Jacqueline Luqman, and I am coming to you live for just a few minutes this evening to talk about a portion of last night's CNN town hall with the Democratic candidates that really was incredibly disturbing to me. I'm sure you all have heard about the town hall at this point. You have heard the comments made by Pete Buttigieg, however you pronounce that man's name. He has a troubled history as mayor, but his comments last night were so disturbing that I did a quick live stream earlier today, and I wanted to do a little bit more of an in-depth live stream tonight because I want to give this topic some justice. So, and I'm not even going to be able to give it the kind of justice it deserves, but I wanted to give you some data to explain to you why the controversy about this issue is just so indicative of what is wrong with this society. So, look, you guys, share the video. Give you a couple of minutes to hop on and invite your friends because I have charts and data and not going to keep you long, but we really have to get this issue straight, I think, if we're going to talk about why this idea of not allowing people who are incarcerated to vote is it's just an awful response. So thanks for hopping on, Aaron and Lisa and Klee. What's going on, bro? Let me know if the audio and everything is okay, if you're hearing me all right, if you're seeing me all right, because this is really important, what I am about to show you in regard to incarcerated people and the way we treat incarcerated people, the way we think of incarcerated people. So let me know, y'all, if the audio is all right. I'm going to assume that it's fine because I haven't heard any of you saying that it's a problem. I'm going to give y'all a couple more minutes to hop on. Thank you, Lisa. What's going on, honey? Hey, Sherry. Everyone, please invite your friends, join My hubby is downstairs. If you're wondering where Mr. Luqman is, producer Luqman is downstairs, manning the boards. We're in the process of transitioning our office from upstairs, our studio from upstairs to downstairs. So he's downstairs doing producer stuff. He has started a watch party for this video. So look, let's get into this. Let me get into this. Let me show you this first, because this is, we keep telling you that you cannot let celebrities dictate your politics. There are some celebrities out there who get some stuff right, and that's fine. But you should never ever let someone tell you who to vote for or what to think about policy just because they're famous and they're your favorite artist, because of stuff like this. Now, look, I am not a Cher fan, okay? I'm just trying to tell you, not a Cher fan. I know plenty of people are, but if you remember from the town hall last night, Bernie Sanders said that he thinks all incarcerated people should vote. And the question that was asked about this issue was so intellectually dishonest, the way it was framed, because uh, the question was asked if you would let the Boston bomber vote, as if everyone who is in prison is convicted of a terrorist act, as if everyone who is in prison is a convicted child molester or a rapist or a murderer. That's the wrong way to frame this discussion. And I'm going to tell you why in a minute. But this is why you don't let celebrities tell you about policy or explain policy to you. Because Cher is ridiculously ignorant on this topic. Does Bernie Sanders really believe people in prison who are murderers, rapists, child molesters, Boston bombers still deserve the right to vote? This was our response. There are more rape and domestic abuse and sex trafficking victims in prison than rapists, abusers, and traffickers. There are people in jail who haven't been convicted of a crime waiting for trial, people who are in prison for nonviolent drug possession. Guards assault, abuse, rape, murder incarcerated people, and nobody on the outside cares. But the guards go home and vote. All the rapists who don't get convicted are voting, but you think everyone who is incarcerated are murderers, deserve to be locked up, and has no rights. That's what we said to the magnificent Cher, and we honestly don't care who does not like that, because that's the truth. You cannot base policy, first of all, on the actions of a very few people. You cannot base a national policy, especially when you're talking about punishment for crime, on what a very few people do. That's punitive. I say that fully understanding that that's exactly what America is. America is a punitive nation. Not just our criminal injustice system, but America itself. The idea of this country is punitive. This country was founded on violence and murder and theft. So the idea that we don't have a problem punishing people that we don't like in every way imaginable, that shouldn't be unusual to anybody. But let me give you the data on the problem with this idea that people who are incarcerated should not be allowed to vote. And specifically, Pete Buttigieg's comment, and I know I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong, but at this point, I don't even care. Because he didn't even deserve for me to take the time to learn how to pronounce his name with his horrible, horrible, just fully Republican, tough on crime perspective on not having incarcerated people vote. This is why his comment is so just absolutely ridiculous and wrong-headed if we're talking about being the home of the land of the free and the home of the brave, and you're talking about upholding people's rights, and this is this country is a shining beacon on a hill. Really? Are we? Not when it comes to people who are incarcerated. This is from a website. I just did a quick search on countries that allow incarcerated people to vote. This is the first thing that came up. I know nothing about this organization. I don't know anything about them, but I love their little chart because it's an international comparison of felon voting laws. 21 countries in the world have no restrictions on incarcerated people who can vote. In 21 countries in the world, incarcerated people who are incarcerated for every crime imaginable are allowed to vote. Austria, Canada, Croatia, the Czech Republic, Denmark, Finland, Germany, Iceland, Ireland, Israel, Latvia, Lithuania, Macedonia, Norway, Serbia, Slovenia, Spain, South Africa, Sweden, Switzerland, and the Ukraine. Those countries have not collapsed because they allow incarcerated people who have been incarcerated for every crime imaginable to vote. Not only is that true, but 14 other countries around the world have selective restriction, meaning some felons may be banned from voting while in prison. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't make it clear about this. 21 countries allow incarcerated people to vote while they are in prison. 21 whole countries, and they're just fine. They have other problems? Absolutely. But one of the problems is not allowing felons to vote while they are in prison. 14 other countries allow incarcerated people to vote with some restrictions. Those restrictions are based on the crimes they committed. Those countries: Austria, Belgium, Bosnia, France, Germany, Greece, Iceland, Italy, Luxembourg, Malta, Poland, Portugal, Romania, and the United States. Now, there are these little footnotes here, the restrictions on allowing felons in prison to vote. The United States bans felons from voting in some states, but not in others. 2 states permit felons to vote while in prison. So when they say some, they actually mean 2. Every other state in this country denies all felons the right to vote while they are incarcerated. And most of the states in this country continue to disenfranchise voters even after they have served their sentence and they have left prison. Of course, you know how we do in Luqman Nation. We're going to give you the link to that website so you can see it for yourself. Don't believe me just because I said it. I want you to look at the information yourself. So around the world, there are 25 other countries that do just fine allowing people who are incarcerated to vote. The argument in this country at this moment about this issue was framed around the candidates last night being asked if they would support the Boston bomber to be allowed to vote. The way that question about incarcerated people voting is so disingenuous, it is so intellectually dishonest, and is so misrepresentative of the people who are incarcerated in this country that not only should Pete Buttigieg be dragged for his response saying that felons shouldn't be allowed to vote at all while they're in prison, but CNN needs to be dragged for asking that question in that way. Here's why. And this goes back to the ridiculous tweet from Cher and anybody else who shares that view that people who are incarcerated, no one who is incarcerated should be allowed to vote. Oh, sorry, I keep forgetting not to do that. This is the website RAIN. If you are not familiar with what RAIN is one of the largest sexual assault assistance and advocacy, sexual assault victims advocacy organizations in the country. They have these great statistics that I hope will help you understand the problem with the way people on the left now, leftists, so-called leftists, so-called liberals, all these people in there cheering Buttigieg saying that incarcerated people should not be allowed to vote. Just in terms of sexual abuse, sexual violence, the vast majority of perpetrators of sexual assault, of rape specifically, will not go to jail or prison. According to RAIN, out of every 1,000 rapes, 995 perpetrators will walk free. 230 are reported to the police. 46 of those reports to the police lead to an arrest. Out of 230 people who report that they were raped to the police, only 46 of those reported rapists are arrested. Only 9 out of those cases get referred to prosecutors. Only 5 of those cases will lead to a felony conviction, and 4.6 rapists will be incarcerated. So there are literally more rapists walking around free on the streets voting right now than there are rapists who are in prison who might be able to vote. But RAIN didn't stop at that. Perpetrators of sexual violence are less likely to go to jail or prison than other criminals. But even when you take that argument in the context of sexual assault into consideration, you still see a very serious problem with believing that people who are incarcerated should not be allowed to vote, because out of 1,000 robberies, only 20 robbers will actually be incarcerated. So most of the people who actually commit robberies are walking around on the street voting right now. Out of 1,000 assault and battery crimes, 33 will be incarcerated. But here's the chart. Here are the charts that I want to focus the most on, because these are more important than anything else, I think, in this discussion. When we're talking about denying people who are incarcerated their right as a citizen to vote, because remember, when you're incarcerated, it does not mean that you are no longer a citizen. You are supposed to be paying a penalty for the crime you committed. Paying a penalty for the crime you committed doesn't mean you're no longer a citizen. But so many people in this country really do want to take people's right to citizenship, if we want to argue that we have a right to citizenship, away because they're incarcerated. But this is why you can't do that. Not if you call yourself a so-called liberal or a so-called decent person, and certainly not if you call yourself a progressive. This is from the Prison Policy Initiative website. This chart was created, this article was posted last month, March 19th, 2019. And it answers the specific question, how many people are locked up in the United States? Not only do they answer the question, how many people are locked up in the United States, but they go farther and answer the question, for what? Out of the 2.3 million people who are incarcerated currently in the United States, 700,000 of those people are incarcerated for violent crimes. That's this area down here. Of those people, you can see 137,000 for assault, 172,000 for robbery, 163,000 for rape, sexual assault, 18,000 for manslaughter, 179,000 for murder. This three groups of people are the people that the shares of the world, of the United States, are all angry about. This 400,000 people convinces the shares of the world and the Pete Buttigieg of the world and all those people who applauded his ridiculous answer, this 400,000 or so people being imprisoned convinces these folks that all of the rest of these people do not deserve to have the right to vote. This small group of people is supposed to keep people who are in prison for property theft, nonviolent property theft, from voting. These people are supposed to keep the 45,000 people in prison for drug possession from voting. And let's keep this clear. Let's make this clear. When these people are talking about not allowing people who are incarcerated to vote, not allowing felons to vote, they're not differentiating between people who are in state prison, federal prison, or local jails. And the population of incarcerated people in local jails is particularly horrifying because 462,000 of the people currently incarcerated in local jails haven't even been convicted of a crime yet. They're just sitting in jail because they literally cannot afford bail. So this 462,000 people, almost 500,000 people, should be denied the right to vote because of these folks here. This is what's going on in the minds of people like Cher and Buttigieg and other people who don't want anyone who is incarcerated to vote. But it's actually worse. It gets worse. Because then you're talking about youth, 46,000 youth, many of whom will transition to adult prisons. And then there are other categories, subcategories that even I didn't think of. Involuntary commitment. I wish I could tell you what that is right now, but I can't because I honestly don't know. I had never heard of that before, but we're going to dig into that. I mean, so you're telling me that people who are in state prison because of public disorder issues shouldn't be allowed to vote because of this group of people right here. And let's just look at rape and sexual assault, shall we? There are, as you saw, more people in prison for other crimes, for robbery, literally more people in prison for robbery than rape or sexual assault. But can we not be honest and admit that there are people in prison for rape and sexual assault who actually had consensual sex when they were minors themselves? How many times do we need to see Black men, especially college-age Black men, convicted of rape and sexual assault because of a consensual relationship that they have had with a college? Come on. If you just want to look at murder and manslaughter, can we not be honest and admit that some of the people who are imprisoned for murder and manslaughter may have been victims of sexual assault and abuse and sex trafficking themselves. There are more people in prison who are the victims of sexual abuse, of spousal abuse, than there are people who actually are abusers. And these are people who are used as the examples for why all of these people, 2.3 million people, most of whom are imprisoned for non-violent offenses, should not be allowed to vote. Let's look at some more charts, because charts are great. In county jails, 76 of people held by jails are not convicted of any crime. These people already are confined, are already incarcerated, and they can't vote. So you mean to tell me that they should not ever be allowed to vote because they're incarcerated because they're poor? That's what people are saying. These people are incarcerated. They are held in jails for local authorities. They are not convicted. They're also held for other agencies. Too numerous to actually put in this chart, apparently. Let's look at another chart. Excuse me. In the federal system, where there are 221,000 incarcerated people, 11,000 are held for immigration, 16,000 are held for drug crimes, 24,000 people are held for public order. This is amazing to me. There are more people in federal prison for public order offenses than there are for violent crimes. But these people are supposed to not be allowed to vote because of this number of people. Last chart. And this is a snapshot of the Bureau of Prisons and U.S. Marshal Service. It doesn't get any better. And it doesn't matter which corrections facility, which criminal justice facility, or whatever you want to call it, we look at. We see, you should see statistically, numerically, the problem with saying that nobody who is incarcerated should be allowed to vote because some of the people who are incarcerated are convicted of violent and heinous crimes. But if that didn't convince you, and this is the last thing I'm going to show you, this is from Grit Post, and this is an actual article about the response that Buttigieg gave last night, and one particular person's response to his comment. Black student gasps while white crowd cheers Buttigieg's opposition to inmates voting. This is the young lady who was shocked at what Buttigieg said, while everybody else around her smiled and applauded like it was a great thing. Kenya Hunter, a journalism graduate student at Emerson College, was in attendance during the back-to-back CNN town halls in Manchester, New Hampshire early in the evening. Hunter asked Senator Bernie Sanders about how he planned to address the yawning racial wealth gap, specifically if he supported reparations for slavery. Sanders said he supports a bill sponsored by Representative Sheila Jackson Lee. And you know what? Good for him. I disagree with Hunter on this. This is what we've been pushing Sanders to say, and that's fine. But let's go further. Hunter went viral once again Monday night during Buttigieg's town hall when moderator Anderson Cooper, who I used to love, now he just gets on my nerves, asked the candidate whether or not he agreed with Sanders' position that felons, including those whom were still incarcerated, should be allowed to vote. Buttigieg flatly responded that currently incarcerated inmates should not be allowed to vote, prompting the mostly white audience to clap and cheer. Hunter's expression of shock and dismay made it into the shot at the 38-second mark of CNN's tweet of the exchange. Let's look at that tweet, shall we? Let's
Before we go to the audience, one more question. Senator Sanders earlier this evening said he's in favor of felons being able to vote even while serving their prison terms.
He was asked specifically about people like the Boston Marathon bomber, people convicted of sexual assault, rape and other things, pedophiles. He said the right to vote is inherent to our democracy, yes, even for terrible people. Senator Kamala Harris just said we should have that conversation. She didn't really answer one way or another. What do you think? Should people convicted of sexual assault, of the Boston Marathon bomber, should they be able to vote?
While incarcerated?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I do believe that when you are out, when you have served your sentence, then part of being restored to society is that you're part of the political life of this nation again. And one of the things that needs to be restored is your right to vote. As you know, some states and communities do it.
No, shut up. I don't want to hear what else he has to say because his first response was garbage. Her reaction to his response was spot on. She's looking at the guy next to her who is also a black person, and she's like, I cannot believe what he just said. And this is why. See, black people, most black people who understand the history of oppression and disenfranchisement of oppressed people in this country understand why this is such a problem. Legal precedent for disenfranchising felons dates back to the Ratliff v. Beale case in Mississippi Supreme Court in 1896, in which African Americans recently freed from slavery were described as having a, quote, previous condition of servitude and dependence, end quote, and were referred to as docile people but careless, landless, and migratory. Chief Justice Tim Cooper, while ruling on a poll tax not related to the case, admitted that Mississippi deliberately discriminated against African Americans' perceived characteristics and the offense to which its weaker members were prone. Felony disenfranchisement remains one of the last relics of the Jim Crow era to remain in place in many states. According to the National Conference of State Legislatures, there are currently 12 states that do not allow former felons to vote, even after completing their sentences. However, like I said earlier, currently incarcerated felons are not allowed to vote in 48 of 50 states. Maine and Vermont are the lone exceptions. I will give you the links to all of those articles. You know how we do in Luqman Nation, and I see that there are so few people on this live stream because all you people who claim that you love justice and you're progressives and you're leftists and you hate the Republicans and you don't like the right. Too many of you and your friends believe that people who are incarcerated deserve to have all of their rights taken away. I know this is true because of how I see even people on our pages, our friends, don't respond. When we post articles about prison abuse, when we post information about freeing political prisoners in this country, when we post information about Mumia Abu-Jamal, when we post information about Assata Shakur, too many of you white people and way too many brainwashed black folks believe that everybody who's locked up deserves to be there, so they deserve the treatment they get. How in the world can you call yourself a progressive or a leftist? Whatever it is you want to call yourself that makes you believe that you are better than the current administration and the party that supports them, how are you better than them when you have more faith in the carceral state in this country than you do in human rights and dignity, even for incarcerated people. Because if I have to sit here and say even for incarcerated people, because I know your problem is that you don't think people who are incarcerated are even human. That's why nobody cares what happens to incarcerated people behind the walls. That's why in prisons around this country, inmates are abused, sexually assaulted, physically assaulted. They're murdered by prison guards. And nobody cares because people automatically think, well, they're in prison, so they deserve what they get. If they hadn't done the crime, they wouldn't have to worry about doing the time. So you don't have a problem with denying people that you have already thrown away any more rights because you don't think they deserve them anyway. They're but for the grace of whatever it is you believe, go you. So for me, for Luqman Nation, this is what we believe. Everyone doesn't deserve the right to cast their vote. Everyone has the right to cast their vote. Because we live in a society that allegedly has an election system that allegedly chooses politicians, especially at the local and state level, by voting. And even for people who are incarcerated, they are a part of this society. Let me tell you how obscene this idea that incarcerated people, if you don't see how obscene it is already, let me tell you how much more obscene it is. Incarcerated people are counted by the census in the municipality in which they are incarcerated. Yes, let me tell you that again. Where people are locked up, they're counted as a part of the population by the census so that the county, the town, the municipality where they're locked up can get money from the government, can get state and federal money. The municipality can get money for the incarcerated, but the incarcerated can't vote. Oh, and by the way, that money does not go to the Federal Bureau of Prisons. It doesn't go to the state correction facility. It doesn't go to the prisoners. It doesn't go to the inmates. It goes to wherever the hell the people who are running the municipality says it goes. This is why incarcerated people are serve out their time in such deplorable conditions. They're literally bodies for the prison industrial complex and for the governments that those prison industrial complexes operate in. Furthermore, inmates who participate in work programs, their income is taxed. Yeah, the little bit of slave wage labor they get, that's taxed. So incarcerated people, their little bit of income can be taxed, but they can't vote? And all those nice white people in that CNN town hall applauded Pete Buttigieg saying that incarcerated people do not have the right to vote? And y'all are sitting online talking about you agree with Cher and you agree with why would Bernie Sanders allow people who are incarcerated to vote? Because it's a human right. And either you believe in them or you don't. So my producer is over here.
Oh. Hey, there you go.
Please weigh in on this.
Well, I mean, I was listening and
Just move over. Yes.
Can you
So
see
the
me?
people, yeah. Oh, let me move over some.
Oh, okay.
See, we're working people. He got his work shirt on. Well, this is how serious and important this issue is for us. This is I couldn't like relax today,
Right.
unless
right.
until we talked about this. So take us home on this
All right,
issue.
well,
Come slide over some
here
more.
you go. Well,
There
I
we
mean,
go.
look, we already know the statistics. We know that America, United States have what 5% of the world's population, and we incarcerate more of our citizens than any other country. That means China, North Korea, all of the so-called bad guys that we don't like. Well, how about we beat all of them in incarcerating our own people? And so anyway, and everything that you said, what I wanted to add was when it comes to the so-called compensation that prisoners get. Now you have a trend now that's been happening now for maybe about a decade. Where now they're making prisoners pay for their own room and board.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So now it's like, and this is even in the county jail system. Now the reason why that's a problem in the county jail because you haven't even been to court. You haven't been convicted of anything. So I know that in New Jersey, in Camden County, when as soon as you go in, you have to pay for your mattress, you have to pay for your blanket, you have to pay for room and board. Now you just got arrested. Being arrested doesn't mean that you've been convicted of anything. You just got arrested. So but this is the way it is, and they're turning this like they have always done into profit and money making and all those other type of things. So and it's a shame because you and I was talking about earlier is that every democracy, so-called democracy outside the United States, allow prisoners to vote,
Right.
even Israel. So I mean, we're way behind the bar for this, and I think that again, a lot of this mass incarceration has allowed rural areas that have lost industry to gain prisons and
Right.
employment. So I mean, it's again, America has not gotten away from its economic paradigm from slavery.
So, thank you for weighing in on that. In Luqman Nation, we're not endorsing candidates. We're not going to endorse candidates. But when a candidate says something that is so appallingly wrong, we have a responsibility to make it clear that this person is not fit for office. Pete Buttigieg, with this response, is not fit for office. And honestly, these other candidates, Kamala Harris, who said, oh, we need to talk about that, there's nothing to talk about. There's nothing to talk about. You've seen the data. If you want to share that with Kamala Harris, go right ahead. But there's nothing to talk about in regard to ensuring that all citizens, we mean it, all citizens are allowed their right to cast their vote.
Right. And I'll just add this one more point if you haven't added it already. I think what really is insulting as American, as African in America, or Black American, African American, whatever you want to label yourself, and being that the Democratic Party, that we're their most loyal base. I think what's insulting is that instead of trying to ensure us that they have policies that would address our issues, they're still playing the game of going after these white folks and still using us as the as an example of this is what we're going to do. I mean, because it's all code word. So what it is that they're still chasing the Trump, the white males, the Trump white males, the so-called angry, disaffected white males and all stuff. And no matter how much we vote for them, they still aren't trying to really win us over.
Right.
So that's what's insulting.
Yeah. And we're going to end on this because that is an important point for Black voters. Because remember, it's this kind of blanket, everyone who is caught up in the criminal justice system is a criminal and needs to be treated as a dreg of society even after they're released, that came out of the 1994 crime bill, where we still see in our communities people who were convicted of drug felonies, even non-violent drug felonies, who were homeless because they couldn't get a job after they came out of prison because of the felony conviction, and then they couldn't get anywhere to live because they were disallowed from public assistance. People lost their children. People, we need to understand
That's
the
right.
policies
Can't get
that
food
came
stamps.
out of the Clinton administration that were punitive against people who were convicted of drug felonies. That people lost their children, people couldn't get food stamp assistance, people couldn't get public housing, they couldn't get Pell Grants. So this is why this young lady, if she understands her history, and if she is on her ball about policy in regard to criminal justice policy and the negative impact it has specifically on Black people, that's why she responded the way she did. That's why we're responding the way we are. That's why Pete Buttigieg is. If you are still supporting Pete Buttigieg at this point, please unfriend the Luqman. That's not ever the kind of oppressed people who have had our rights curtailed and stomped on cannot in good conscience support the rights of another human being being denied.
That's true.
So that's Luqman Nation's stand on this issue of this controversy around felony voting. Felons, people who are convicted of felonies and are incarcerated for any reason, should be allowed to vote. Period. So.
Well, I mean, I agree.
So, thanks for watching. Please share this video. I will give you the links to all of the information that we talked about and a little bit more stuff. And join us again for our regular show, which
it's
is
Friday because we have Danny.
That's right. This
right.
Friday, we're very excited about this. We are going to be interviewing a young man who wrote an amazing book about
American exceptionalism, something like that.
About the ineffectiveness of corporate media. We're going to be talking to Danny Hyphone this
Thank
Friday.
you. I was going to leave that to you because I did not want to mess up his last name. He's also contributed to Black Agenda Report, too.
Yes, so we're real excited about that. So join us Friday night at what time?
9 o'clock.
At 9 o'clock. And listen, thank you all for your support. And as always, be really good to each other. Be really good to everyone, even our brothers and sisters, especially our brothers and sisters locked up behind the walls. As always, peace.
Tell him, Marco.